The Wheel of Time consists of 15 books, 4.4 million words, and there's no question that it is a journey and an undertaking. But the question we're asking today is, should you read The Wheel of Time? I'm going to save you many minutes. My answer is yes, wholeheartedly yes. But what I'm going to explain is why you should read The Wheel of Time. So, I wouldn't say that I am a die-hard fantasy fan for all of my life. It's something that I've jumped into what feels like more recently on a hardcore basis. And everybody that I asked for recommendations, they said, The Wheel of Time, you must try The Wheel of Time. And initially I was put off. It's 14 books, 15 if you include the prequel. And as I said before, none of them are small, clocking in at 4.4 million words. So I decided I would read each book and then have a filler book in between from a different genre, because I thought maybe I was going to burn out. By the time I got to the last 5 or 6 books, I no longer put a filler book in between. I decided that I had to know what was going on. And in total, reading this series took me about 14 months. And here is why, in my opinion, you should read The Wheel of Time. The first reason is it's going to transport you into the world of the author in such a way that has never happened to me before. And there's a few reasons for this. The first one is because the author, Robert Jordan, is very descriptive. He will enter you into a scene and describe everything in that scene. So you're more likely than not going to have a very clear vision of exactly what's happening, what they look like, and the smells, the sights, the feels, and just the vibe of the entire scene due to his level of description. And when that is echoed and repeated across such a long period of time, you can't help but feel like you're totally immersed in the world, because there are no real blank spots in the scene that you're in and the people that you're talking with. You know every detail of those people because it's repeated so often, and you just find yourself with such a clear vision of what's happening in a book. And sometimes that can be difficult if books aren't clear enough and aren't specific enough, especially in a fantasy genre where there is strange things going on. Sometimes it can be hard to imagine what's happening. So that is the first reason. To add on to that, something that transports you in this world is not just the descriptions of the places and the people, it's really the cultures that get built up. And the cultures aren't just like some gimmicks. There are genuinely like 10 to 15 different main cultures that we interact with on a scene by scene basis. And it's not small things that the difference is, it's ingrained in their personalities. And it's done so well that after a few books, the cultures I'd already been introduced to, you could tell which character was from where without the author telling me, because of the way they acted, their rituals, their customs, the words they used, all of those things. And it was so well done. You can tell that Robert Jordan, the author, spent so much time trying to understand and build these cultures in his mind that he had such a clear vision of what that culture was about, what their goals were, where their habits came from, because he had such a big scope on them as a culture and their history, because he built this world so detailed in his own head that it just comes across so genuine, and it just felt like such an all-inclusive and large universe because of the different cultures that were inside of it. And I don't think I've ever seen that done as well as in The Wheel of Time. And my final point on the it will transport you point is that it's often what's not said that also helps out as well. And as I already mentioned, Robert Jordan is extremely descriptive, but throughout the course of the series, we learn everything that we need to know with our storyline. And it's not forced, it's added in really smoothly and naturally. However, there are so many mentions of myths, legends, battles gone past, nations that fell apart, locations that were pivotal in previous ages, and they don't get a deep description. There's mentions of like stories and nursery rhymes and all of these types of things where there's literally just that, they're just mentions. And what that means is that it's like the real world. It's like our world. Like, unless you take your time to delve into every topic, which is literally impossible, you're not going to know everything that happens. But because there are so many half-mentioned things and things that are kind of like skated over, but that if someone in the culture is mentioning it to someone else, they'll just nod and agree. And what it does is it adds to the world without having to describe everything, because it's insinuating that there's so much depth to this world. And on a second and third reread, which I plan to do, I'm sure I can obsess about these a lot more and try to connect these a lot more, because I already know what happens in the main plot and storyline. So what's not said, and the little comments and the flourishes on these cultures and on these descriptions and on these worlds, and on these nations and lands and people, the things that aren't quite said and are just mentioned, they add so much depth to this world, and it really gives you an opportunity to build on the world based on your own imagination, because that's all up for interpretation. And it's great because we're the best of both worlds. We have hyper descriptive main storyline and plot, and then we also have so many small things that are thrown in there and not quite said that add to the world, that I can really just go off on a tangent and imagine myself. And as you can probably tell from my excitement from just explaining this, it's incredible. It will transport you like no other series has. And of course, the second thing is our characters. How can you not mention the characters? I think that the best thing about these characters is that we spend such a long time with them, which is inevitable. It's a long series, that everything that they get, so every development that these characters get, in my opinion, they 100% earn it. There's no gimmies, there's no magic fixes that aren't earned through great trials, tribulation, pain, sacrifice, and defeat. Like, everything that these characters get is well earned because we have the time to develop them properly. There's not one development of any of these main characters, or any characters really, that I look at and I say, that was cheap, that was ineffective, oh, that was a get out of jail free card. All of them, I feel the development with them. I feel their pain, I feel their learning curve, and I believe that you will as well. So these characters, they just feel so well fleshed out, and their life lessons are something that almost you could take away as well. So not only do we spend a lot of time with our 6 or 7 main characters and jump around their perspectives, which is a lot of variety already, especially for a fantasy book, we also get between, I would guess, like 25 and 40 perspectives, even if it's just like one paragraph here or one chapter here, across the whole book. And it's from all different races, from all different corners of this imaginary land. And it just really fleshes out this world, and you really start to understand things from like all different perspectives. And it's such a fantastic journey to be able to do it that way. Like, it's such a broadening, and we meet so many different characters from so many different cultures that it really does feel like a world. And it kind of adds to my first point, like it will transport you because you see things from so many different perspectives as well. And my final thing on the characters is we're allowed oftentimes to come to our own conclusions on the characters. I don't think there is really definitive right and definitive wrong. There's so much grey with these characters, which is something that I look for. I don't really look for just, yes, these people are 100% correct and these people are 100% not, because life doesn't work like that. We're allowed to draw our own conclusions on these characters. And Robert Jordan, what he does is oftentimes he'll make what the character is going through very obvious to us. The solution is very obvious to us. Their issue is very obvious to us. The thing they need to change is very obvious to us sometimes. And sometimes he will make the solution very obvious to the character, and what they need to change really obvious to them, and what their problem is and the solution to it really obvious to them. But he'll make it very obscure to us. And when the solution comes, I'll be like, oh, okay, that makes a ton of sense. How did I not see that? But sometimes it's the other way around. And it's just very interesting. I've not really read a series where I'm allowed as much artistic reign on the morality of the characters. And that keeps things really interesting, especially when it comes to the fandom. And I'll talk about the fandom afterwards. But it just means the perspective on characters is so diverse between the people who've read it, because so much is left up to interpretation. And of course, number 3, the plot. The plot is very much like life, and I think some of that comes because of the length of the story. I think I really overestimated how much these characters could grow in 1 or 2 books, but I underestimated how much they could grow across 14. And it's mainly because I'd never read character development that has been so thorough and so, I don't want to say long, but like, I can't think of a better word for it. Something so lengthy, which also means long, but just something that felt so realistic with regards to development and the plot itself as well. There was no rushing, no shoving square pegs into round holes just to move the plot forward. We had time and we used it really well. Everything felt so natural there. And with this book, it ebbs and it flows. There are some periods of time where it is very, very slow and we're doing character development. We're looking at we're building our moralities of these characters. We're really building the reasons why things are going to happen in the future and the perspectives and the standpoints. And we're really looking at the formula for how these people are going to make decisions, and that will explain why they make certain decisions later on. And then that could happen across quite a lot of a book. And then near the end or the middle or even the start, sometimes it will be 50 to 100 pages where everything changes. And because of how carefully laid and intricate the plot has been and the whys are built up and the backstory, then those 50 to 100 pages are absolutely exhilarating. Number 4, and I can't really give much away, but it's something called Tel'aran'rhiod. And it's like a dream world, basically. And the rules are still there, but they're definitely fuzzed. And because it's a dream world, you can have a nightmare side of it and you can have an absolutely joyous side of it. And I absolutely loved reading those scenes. They were some of the funnest scenes I've ever read. And I can't say any more. I don't really want to throw any spoilers out there, but Tel'aran'rhiod. My next reason is the ending. And again, no spoilers here, but the only thing I can say, and I think this is unanimous across everybody who's read it, is the ending is satisfactory, which is sometimes so difficult. And I don't mean satisfactory as in like, oh yeah, it was quite good, as in it satisfied me. Based on how much build-up there was and how much plot and the amount of time I put into it and the heartaches and the joys and the happiness and the lows, the ending satisfied all of that build-up. It gave me a version of what I was looking for, essentially. And I can't say any more again because I don't want to give any spoilers out, but you will not be disappointed. My next reason is because it's already written. So many of my favorite series that I'm reading currently don't have the next book scheduled or the final book scheduled, and it's so frustrating. And the reason that's frustrating is because I want to read it. It sounds obvious, but I want to get a conclusion to the story. And knowing that I can't is frustrating because it draws me back from investing more of my energy into that story. But this I knew was completed. I knew it had everything, well, not every last thing, but like the story as the author planned it was capped and finished. So it just meant I could wholeheartedly pour myself into the series with no worry that it might not be finished. Reason 392, it's an achievement. Outside of this series and outside of just books, it's just a life achievement. Like to look at something and commit and say, I'm going to read that and get it done, knowing full well it might take a year of your life or at least 6 months. If you read at the speed I do anyway, maybe you're much faster or maybe a little slower, but yeah, it's going to take a sizable commitment. That just feels good. When you're done, you can say, I said I was going to do this and I did it. And it's no mean feat, it's impressive. And I don't know if people read for that reason. It's not like a top 5 reason I read for, but having the books on the shelf, having the trophies in such a sense, and having that story in my brain and enjoyed feels good. And my final reason is the fandom. The fandom has been fantastic. Now, I actually decided to read a book and then make a prediction on it before I read the next one, and I put those on YouTube, and you'll find them on my channel if you decide to read along as well, or if you've already read it and would like to see my process of reading it. I felt like it was really fun. And the reason it was really fun was because of the people in the fandom of the Wheel of Time who were there for that journey. And what I got from that, the sense I got from that was just a real genuine and wholesome excitement for me to become not one of them, but like, I suppose one of them, but for me to enjoy what they enjoyed. It felt like such a pure fandom with regards to how they decided to enjoy it. And it was fantastic. I can't fault anybody who was on that journey with me, and everybody I've interacted with have been so passionate about the story. And I've not reread it yet. So many of them have reread it, and I know that they have theories. There's entire YouTube channels dedicated to just this series where they discuss things in small passages, and that really gives props to the depth of this world and what it gave to its fans as well. How it presented itself to its fans, how it finished itself, how it stayed true to just giving the best experience as a whole. And those fans have taken that on wholeheartedly. So if you're looking for not just the story, but also a bit of a community to dive into that probably is going to go on forever because of the depth of the story and how much hypothesizing can happen because of it, and new things are still coming out and theories being unraveled, this is it. Like, you can get all of that with this series. Are there negatives? Of course there are. This series is so long, and regardless of length, there's always negatives of any series because this is the real world. So let me tell a few of the ones that I thought were negatives. And one actually comes from the first positive I mentioned, the level of description. Sometimes the same descriptions are given over and over again, and they're just strange ones. There's with one woman, she always grabs her braid and will tug on this braid, and I'm surprised they managed to stay attached to her scalp because she must have tugged on it millions of times, and I read it millions of times as well. Another thing would be with women smoothing their skirts with their hands, so they would smooth it down. They would always cross their arms under their bosom, and for some reason, their bosom is always described, which is not in a strange way, but it sounds strange on the surface of things. Their bosom was just always described in some way, which, looking at it, is just a bit random. So yes, there's going to be a lot of repetition when it comes to some of the descriptions, and it was a little bit infuriating, but not so infuriating that I wasn't able to read. When I would see those words grouped together, I think my brain would just automatically skip over it once I got several books in, because I knew what it was describing. Some of the books are very slow. I won't mention which ones, but it's quite unanimous that one of them, the whole community believes that you could probably take out quite a chunk of it and it wouldn't affect too much of the plot. Outside of that, there are sections of certain books that are very slow. But it depends what you're looking for. If you're looking for an in-depth world, and if you're looking for human interactions and human progression, it's not that much of a big deal. Like, there were some parts of some books where it felt a little bit like a chore to get through, but I did appreciate what that was doing for the rest of the story and for my relationships with those certain characters when it was in their perspectives as well. So some people think it's a negative. I would agree that sometimes it is quite boring in those sections, but overall, I think it does benefit the story. And the final dislike is there's one character that had a lot of potential that I did not agree with how their ending occurred. And by say agree with, obviously I don't get any say in how it happens, but I wasn't happy with how their story ended. But of course, no spoilers, so I can't really say any more than that. If you want to know who that is, obviously I have all the videos posted, but if you've already read it, you probably already know. If you haven't, you should read it. All in all, I couldn't imagine not knowing these characters and not having experienced this story. And there's no way I could look anyone in the eye and tell them that the slow moments, the repetitive descriptions, the length of the series holds a candle to the depths of the friendships you will make with these characters, the awe at the world building ability, and just the sheer magnificence of the overall story and plot. It's a no contest. You should definitely read The Wheel of Time. Outside of that, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. please like and subscribe. And if you are interested in watching my journey of the Wheel of Time, all the videos are on my channel. I'd love to have you come along and watch that journey with me as well. Have a great day.